Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, it is time to get some work done on something that Three Crow requested some time ago, which is progression for improvements to the progression system, essentially. Working on any improvements I can come up with there for some of the more kind of nuts and bolts mechanical things, ability scores and other number based things. Something that I think a lot about when it comes to character progression in tabletop games, and it's a little bit easier to think about it in a fantasy setting or context because I'm thinking about Pathfinder. I think about how somebody once explained to me that Pathfinder has these background features that you end up getting from your race and from other environments, other walks of life. And by doing so, you actually get those benefits as you level up. Now, there does exist within, like Foundry, the ability to, for example, if I go into the traits, I go to races, and for example, I'm just picking a random thing. All of this stuff is advancement under any level, but I could add one. Say I want you to be able to get an ability score improvement. I could put that at a level here, 1 through 20. So that's like an example of where that's a very easy thing for me to add if that was something that we wanted. However, I do think it's probably a good idea to, like, one of the things that happens with the heirloom, I forget what they're called, but the things in Pathfinder that give you benefits from your race or your background or whatever, they end up being fairly small. It's like skill proficiency improvements in hyper-specific situations is like a very common thing. So it'll be like, +2 to attack rolls against undead, or +3 persuasion check rolls when this is the context, or what. It's contextual bonuses that I feel like are actually really challenging for anybody to remember in the heat of it. Obviously, if they're all programmatically handled for you, that's one thing. But I'm guessing they probably aren't in a Foundry context. And obviously, remember, this is designed to be played with pen and paper, so like that's where a lot of these tabletops are all designed for initially. People translating them into digital spaces do take some of the grunt work off of you for number rolls and stuff. But that's about it, so. Excuse me. So I feel like overall, this is an opportunity for us to provide a little bit of something different. One of the things that I was immediately kind of thinking about is, so I had Blink's character sheet pulled up here because you can go into special traits and you can access certain things here. So obviously there's some things that are just straight up like flags. So advantage on initiative, Diamond Soul or whatever, stuff like that. The Jack of all trades thing. These things all do things they do pre-calculated things. But there's other details here that are kind of interesting. So weapon critical hit threshold, that's kind of interesting. Spell critical hit threshold as well for spells. This would be for cases that are specific to fantasy, since we don't roll to hit. We don't roll to hit unless you're outside of weapon range in Cosmonarchy. And then this is interesting as well. A number of additional damage dice added to melee weapon critical hits. It's awfully specific. There's no ranged option. This is interesting. And then you've got these global bonuses. So melee weapon attack, melee weapon damage, ranged, melee spell, ranged spell, global ability check, global saving throw, global skill check, and global spell DC. So, one of the things that specifically in Three Crow's case, one of the things that he had recommended or requested specifically was his specific wording on it. Oh, I think my, I just remembered I forgot to edit this. This is not Cosmonarchy Tabletop Prep. There you go. But yeah, one of the core ideas behind what was requested here, you know, it was the numbers. You know, it's skill proficiencies, ability scores, stuff like that. So the first thing that immediately comes to mind about that is you think about when you're actually able to be proficient in something. Unless you're selecting a feature that gives you proficiency, and you can only select features in very specific circumstances, I think the only other time you might get proficiencies is from like your subclass. And it's stuff that I've usually, maybe you can choose between certain things, but most of the time it's just given to you. And then, you know, it's one of those things where if you have proficiency, you get expertise. If you have expertise, I guess you're even fucking more amazing at it, you know? But the reason why I wanted to go through this list of things that are in the special traits case is because this is important for us to know, because this could give us really easy things to implement. Like, technically, we can implement whatever we want. But if it's related to this, then you are in a situation where you can use these things, these fields, to automatically add the bonus, and then you won't have to worry about not knowing about it or forgetting about it in the moment. It'll just be handled for you. So that, I think, is worthwhile. Now, as far as we are concerned, as it pertains to the actual level up stuff. So we're talking about, like, right now we're at level 3 in ADS. Are we going to be in a situation where leveling up to level 4, should that happen, what does that give you? So typically at level 4 you get, like, ability score improvement. The weird thing, though, is that the ability scores only matter every second time. And you can only do, I think you get a +2 at 4th level, if I'm not mistaken. We can check that in the progression by going into the SRD content. Going into our classes section, and for example, in the Barbarians case, we see level 4's ASI points 2, and then ASI points 2 at level 8 again. Yeah. So that's significant because... Oh, what's up, 3Co? That's significant because the ability score increases do matter in the sense that they can increase one score once, or if you, for whatever reason, made your character with 2 odd numbers, you can technically boost both of them. But they only matter every other time. So that's like the first thing that comes to mind. And that's really complicated to try to change to make it so that single-digit ability scores are better. We would actually be better off at that point just writing our own logic or our own rule set in Foundry, which is really complicated. So I would caution against such a thing. But one of the things that I am thinking about is it does feel pretty bad to kit your character out in such a way where you end up with like an odd score somewhere. And sometimes that can happen from a combination of your point buy and your racial modifiers. So the first thing that I'm kind of thinking about there is I feel like you probably should feel a little bit less like, damn it, I have an extra number. That's I'll throw that in my dump stat and who cares, or I'll throw that in my max stat because whatever, it doesn't matter. But if, for example, you got one ASI point every level, then now imagine, okay, by level 3, you've received 3 of such points. So this would effectively double by level 4, and compared to typical progression, how many points of ability score you've been able to get as an increase. But does it really make that much of a distinction? I mean, we spend a lot more time in these levels anyway. I think it would make sense as an option. Just something I was thinking about. So, our idea list so far. One ASI every level. That's one. Beyond just getting the ASI point every level. The other thing is, like, so the other progression stuff I was thinking of is that if you endure some sort of extreme hardship and come out the other end, or you pull off some incredible feat, like you hit in some ways it's like, well, it's the dice, but if you find a way to hit like a crit at a really important time on a really important task at the height of an emotional story beat or some kind, I feel like it should be possible to leverage such an act into increasing an ability score based on that. Like, not because you leveled up, but just because you did something really fucking good. That doesn't have to be something that, like, is very common, but it should technically be possible. Let's see here what Trico's saying. Something that was on my mind was giving you more freedom to make more challenging encounters. Since we're level, it would be worth considering doubling the HP you get per level and base, rewarding story beats, character progression, archetype fulfillment, taking exhaustion for training, etc. is great too. Oh, rewarding story beats, as in the story beats are rewarding, not we are rewarding the story beat. Yeah, I mean, so like part of the challenge in general of improving progression or even considering progression as a body is you can't really take any one-size-fits-all approach a lot of the time without worrying about the exceptions. Like, maybe +1 ASI doesn't matter to 90% of the classes in a bad way. Maybe it's just net positive. But maybe +1 ASI every level ends up being like, holy shit, this one character can get really fucking powerful. You know what I mean? On the point of the health, I feel like what actually would need rework is how dying works. And we've talked about this so many times. Dying or death saves, or taking fatal damage, mortally wounding, There's a system called Deathbringer, as a fairly popular DM and YouTuber, D&D YouTuber, named Professor DM, has made Deathbringer. In Deathbringer, when you take fatal damage, rather than going down, you enter into some sort of, like, very primal state, shall we say, or some sort of, like, adrenaline state, where you remain at 1 HP, and if you survive the encounter... Or maybe I'm getting that part wrong, actually. I think what happens is it works sort of like in regular D&D, where you go down or whatever, but you don't have to worry about death saves. You're down. Maybe you can do some limited action while down, like you can pull off a ranged attack, or you can like hack at somebody's knees or something, or you can cast a spell, but you can't move, or if you can move, it's really limited, something like that, right? And then once you survive that, you get some change occurs to your character. Usually, I think it's all positive changes, actually. Like, you get some kind of new benefit. And that's what happens the first time you get downed. First time you take fatal damage and would have died, right? And I think that can happen a second time, but the second time, maybe it's more of a mixed bag. It's not just a straight up improvement. And the third time, it's death. Your character is dead. But they don't just die. They drag around their entrails in one hand and hack with a sword with the other or whatever. And they die at the end of the battle. Because they're like, yeah, heroes can die, but they finish the fight that they're doing. You know what I mean? So I think it's something, I don't know exactly how mechanistically he pulls that off. I don't know if you just regain your health. I don't know. Like I like the idea, actually, narratively, of the idea of your final death, because in his game it's 3. Whatever we would decide on is whatever. But if your final character taking fatal damage moment makes you invincible for that moment, forgetting for a moment how we would justify that narratively, like divine intervention or something, right? The idea of like you are sacrificing yourself and your character is coming to an end, but in doing so guarantees success for the party is pretty legit, honestly. Like, at least for that particular fight, you know, like if it was looking really bad, maybe you get some like 2 rounds of immortality or something like that. But you've been spent. You know, it could be something like that. I don't know exactly how I'd have to read his system to see how he did it. But that's the core idea, is that you have a finite number of times you can be downed. You don't worry about death saving throws. You do still have actions during the downed state. And once you survive the encounter, you get rewarded for that. But after a certain number of times, that's game over. Like, that's what you're building towards. Movement reduced to 5 feet. You're prone, can't get up. You can only spend your action to attack with disadvantage. Use an item, take movement until you're helped up. Yeah, I'd have to decide what... I think it would be a case-by-case basis, honestly, which sounds a little bit like a cop-out. But I feel like different characters would do different things, or could do different things based on their capabilities. They'd have different components there, I think. If that makes sense. I feel that, anyway. I feel like Tiber from Terath's Hunt, if he gets downed, I think he should still be able to grapple people. That's just like, I don't know, it just fits. I think he should still be able to grapple them and like hold them to the ground with him or something. and punch them or whatever. But he just can't move. And it's like, it's painful, but he's like, this is just a setback. And now you're set back too. Shit like that. Then we think about, like, if I compare that to, like, Nathaniel, I feel like Nathaniel should be still able to, like, chuck a weapon or fire a crossbow bolt or throw some caltrops or whatever the fuck. Is like, he's still himself. He's still going to try to do his shit. He's just not, like, he's like, gutted by something, and his body's in shock, and he needs some kind of healing or intervention of some sort. And so, like, that's a case where, like, the lack of mobility is actually a really big hit to him. It would be really bad for any dexterity-based character as well, like Blink, obviously, or Ashtorium, right? I think one thing that we on a more meta level, we would need to, one of the advantages of reworking how death works and how taking fatal damage or downed works or whatever, being downed, what really is nice about reworking this system, the goal of the rework should actually be to make players feel more comfortable with the idea of their characters dying. And if it feels more fair and fun even, and like compelling and interesting, I'm not going to say that they're going to be jumping for joy about their characters being killed, but I hope that they would at the very least feel like the rule set allows them to feel heroic and epic while dying. In their final moments, they should feel epic, like what I was explaining the Deathbringer thing. I think that has the potential to be incredibly epic. Our translation of that being that the person is giving up their mortal coil, but in doing so they are glimpsing divinity with a temporary boon of immortality, and none can face them in that moment. And I don't know exactly what that status effect would entail mechanistically. Like, I think just making it so that they no longer receive damage for 2 turns or whatever, and during that time they have doubled the actions or something. I don't know. Like, make them into a divine berserker in a way, or whatever. Remove spell slot requirements and shit like that. Yeah. And I think, like, impactful, tragic, these are good words for it, but like, what doesn't hit a lot of the time is when, oh, I failed my 3rd death saving throw, or, oh, the orc slashed at me while I was downed and so I died. That doesn't feel heroic, and that's like, if that's the kind of game that we decide we want to play one day, when we sit down and we say, let's go grimdark, let's stray away from the heroic fantasy elements that powered D&D and that we've kind of built a Syndesor around in many ways, where characters do epic things. And as the old, I don't even remember where it came from, maybe it was 4chan, the old post goes, doesn't afraid of anything. If our characters are John Halo and they don't afraid of anything, then that's like, there's an element of the mechanics that should reflect that. But I mean, D&D isn't, the death mechanics in D&D aren't really made for anybody, because if you're downed, you're not doing, it's not like grimdark, it's just random chance shit, and then oh man, I failed, and most DMs are not going to have the orc attack the grounded guy. Maybe it would make sense if they, like, most of the times you guys are fighting enemies that would rather take you captive or whatever, so but that still, like, removes a player. So that gets back to what I was saying, is part of reworking the death mechanics should be giving you the option, like, getting people comfortable with the idea of taking over an NPC, or having a backup character that they've got, that they can explain where they were and how they got to a certain location. And they might need to sit it out for 20 minutes or whatever, like, while the rest of the party gathers their shit. And that will give them time to sort of mull things over and process the fact that their character is dead and all that. And they can choose if they want to just bow out. They would leave the table, in air quotes. At that point, then they're more than welcome to, because it's gonna be a fucking event. But yeah, the intelligent attack targeting for downed party members is usually reserved for a while out of the game when you encounter someone who's meant to be a true foe or recurring villain, unless it's grimdark, as you say. Well, yes, and that's kind of why I deliberately designed the enemies that you face, like the bandits and Paladin Partner. The early enemies that you end up facing are not really, like, there just to kill you. I guess Akranon may have been an exception, but even he would rather, like, Akranon would probably rather possess you or something. You guys didn't get down very often in ADS, so that didn't end up showing up. But oops. Let's see. So So we'll say reduced to 0 hit HP equals downed. Level 13 party and critical roll get almost TPK'd. Yeah, trying to run a game for all those players. I know that they collaborate and shit, because, you know, it's like a whole enterprise or whatever, but the ad-libbing stuff that is actually done, the improv stuff that's actually done, that is so challenging. That's wild. I think this makes sense. So, I obviously don't know the number exactly, but I think when you get downed, it just hobbles you, so it cuts your movement to like 5. And maybe we'll have some kind of point about reducing the action economy. Healing can't fix this, so if this is like a 4-turn thing or 3-turn thing or whatever, like this, I feel like that's like a, I don't know, it'll probably just be 2 turns or something like that. It's pretty significant in the middle of a combat, but after you recover from that, or, you know, after the battle, I guess, you gain a permanent boon of some kind, and we can decide what that kind of thing could be, but it should be something significant. And then you only get so many downs before you reach Death's Door, and that's when you get the, you know, I don't know, maybe it'll be like 10 turns, because you get a minute, your final minute, you're at your last minute. So I think that's pretty good. I think it's pretty good. We've got, yeah, we've got some other progression ideas in here. I think getting an ASI every level is good. It helps you boost your, it helps you build towards certain possibilities. I know that +1 is not very impactful by itself. The only time odd numbers come into play are tiebreakers between contested checks. When you hit the roll, you know, when you need a tiebreaker. It's not very significant, but I think it's still something worth discussing. So skill proficiencies. This is also something that I think is... Oh, right, yeah. I think the last thing I talked about was that you get a prof bonus of... So you start off with your proficiency bonus being 2, and then at level 2 it increases to... No. It's 4 at level 3, and then at level 5 it becomes... Oh, sorry, it's 3 at level 3, and at 5 it becomes 6. Or 4. I wrote it down somewhere. It's here. Okay, yeah. This is what I wrote it out for the exactor. So 2, 3, and 4. That makes sense. Okay, that's fine. What are we going to do about skill proficiencies? This is something where I've got, like... I have a ton of thoughts. I feel like we could rope in your background here. So at the very top of the stream, I talked about when you have a situation where you're playing through... you're talking about, like, Pathfinder, and they have these minor bonuses that come at you as you level up. But some of them are obviously going to be from your class, but a lot of them are from your race, your background, that kind of stuff. Your characteristics, shall we say. Stuff that is unrelated to your class. So these non-class characteristics give you these lasting benefits as you level up. It's like you're tapping into them, or you're building on those skills. It's a stand-in for having situations where you actually take things from your background and you increase your proficiency in them. And I feel like if we took, for example, the criminal background here, which is from, like, it's from tabletop, as part of your advancement, you get the deception skill proficiency. But imagine instead if you had a list of things that criminals might be really good at. So, like, acrobatics, athletics, deception, insight, intimidation, perception, survival, sleight of hand. So, I just pulled out 8 skills. Now, imagine if every time you level up, you pick one of those skills to become half proficient in, or proficient in. I think it could just be straight up proficient. Now, a problem is if there's overlapping proficiencies, should you get expertise for this? Maybe. Maybe that's something that you would deliberately try to figure out. But I think, like... one skill proficiency per level based on race plus background. Overlapping proficiency equals expertise. I mean, for a level up, I think that's worthwhile. You're only talking about on average getting like 4, like in between. Well, you get in between 3 and 6 of those, or 3 and 5 of those, on average, right? If max level is 6, so I think that's pretty significant. Oh yeah, the other idea that I had was critical success at powerful moments, high points, built-in skill, in proficiency, or even ASI boosts. So this is unrelated to... This is completely unrelated to leveling up. But I was thinking that if you do something really important at a high impactful moment, high point of the campaign, boss fight with Heron Call, and Benson charges forward and does a combat leap or whatever, like that, well, if he wasn't already proficient in acrobatics or athletics or something like that, that's probably pretty significant. Minimum success for proficiencies and expertise. Yeah, I think that's a good idea as well. So I'll say other mechanics. I don't see any argument against it. If you're really good at something, if you're proficient in something, the worst you can do is a subpar job. Like, the worst thing that you are going to do would be... Well, yeah, I guess... So, an expert... The worst an expert does would be, like, mid for someone who's uninitiated, right? That's sort of the vibe we're going for. I think that's fine. I think, yeah. Obviously, this will make things like the ridiculous athletics checks for grappling that are made by somebody like Tiber will probably be even more absurd with this rule set, so there might need to be some rebalancing there. But on its face, from a narrative perspective, like, the things that we did for Tiber's grappling specifically because he was supposed to be really good at it, some of those things may not need to be ramped up as much because we have a situation like this where we have this baseline rule set for all characters that improves the sense making of how they work, just whether or not it passes muster. Now it does. And if I liked mustard, I would say pass mustard. You know, end it here. I don't mind honey mustard. It's pretty good. So the other thing that we should think about is when you are able to add new features. By default, this was at level 4. If you chose to withhold your ASI, you could sometimes get a feature. If we're giving you +1 ASI every level, then that doesn't matter, right? So... Minimum success, you can remove doubling prof bonus for expertise since now you have minimum success. Got 1 +1. Well, I don't know how you would do that. The thing, for example, like deception, because he's an expert at it. It's going to be a +6 here, so that's it's a +7 because it is he's got +1 mod from charisma. His proficiency bonus is 3. and he multiplies it by 2 for the expertise. So that automatically happens. So you'd have to like -3 here every time you roll an expert roll, if we were to remove that rule. So it would be annoying. People would figure it out. But, or I guess I could probably like... Yeah, I guess I could go in here and just manually undo it. Hey, what's up, Elephant? Yeah, I feel like this stuff does make some sense here. The death thing was sort of orthogonal to what we were doing today, but I feel like it's pretty good. I feel like the I feel like overall the downs and deaths thing is probably one of the most exciting aspects of everything, but and there'd probably be this whole like sub system created to track how many things you've got. So like, for example, these are exhaustion levels. So what we could do to keep track of it actually is if, you know, say we're only allowing you to score 3 downs and it's almost like your lives, and then after that you're dead. And so like we could just do this, right? Like this is filled in. I guess it doesn't really matter, but like, oh, Blink got downed. Okay. Well, there we go. Like mark that down now, and then like that would just follow him around until what? Until some sort of high-level healer was able to revivify him, even though he's still alive. Like maybe that's what revivify turns into in that way. So stuff like that's pretty neat, in my opinion. I think that kind of thing is pretty cool. Yeah, congrats for being off of work. I hope that you get lots of rest and recovery. Homie's always doing so much work. So I think with the way that all that is spoken, I think that's a really good system. We'll have to knock out like some of the specifics here. I think, like I was thinking about 2 turns for the hobbling. Maybe it's even like a waning debuff where like maybe it lasts for 3 turns, but the most intense effects are on the first turn, and then like you are a little bit better in the second turn, and you know you recover partially each turn or whatever. That might even be what I end up doing. But for leveling up, it's just straight up giving you one ability score point, attribute point, and then giving you obviously we noted the proficiency bonus stuff. We already took care of that in current tabletop. Skill proficiency per level based on race and background. the player would choose for their character which ability score they want to become more proficient in. And then, obviously, that kind of goes nicely with this minimum 5 and minimum 10 for roles that you're proficient or expert in. And then you've got just this other note that, like, I don't know that this will happen very often. It probably won't. It's something else. Something weird would be going on. But if you end up having a critical success at a very important moment, I would reserve the right to reward you with some bonus or another. And that could be like, now every time you attack with this weapon, you do 1 extra damage, or you something. Even if it's something as minor as that. It could be a skill proficiency or skill bonus of some kind. And it could even be an ability score if it's really important. Like, just straight up increase your strength by 2 or something, so that you get an extra mod. Some sort of really lasting benefit like that. And that kind of represents like really big shifting moments in somebody's life and somebody's existence that from that point onward, they are forever changed. So I think this is a really good framework anyway for some of this stuff. Now, as I recall from what 3Crow had sent to me, what I've been occasionally looking at over here, is so he had said that potential improvements to the character progression system concerning ability scores and skill proficiencies, but then he also said optionally this sort of benefits provided from one's background. I think backgrounds would benefit from being somewhat standardized. But also there's, not every background is created equal, and so I get the idea that like the Dampier background is like fucking really involved and gives you all sorts of wacky progression stuff, and then most of the backgrounds just don't give you anything. Give you a feature, or you can choose a few different features or whatever. Like when people pick the soldier background, like you get some proficiencies. And I don't know. It's kind of jank. It's kind of like there's not that much going on for it. I feel like one thing that Mass Effect, and I think Baldgate, and maybe even Dogvinity, a lot of the RPGs where you select a background would then give you unique dialogue options that obviously in this case we don't have that same. We do everything like sort of ad lib. We're not scripting everything out, but maybe reminding players that they can play into their background, they can leverage their history for some sort of advantage in dialogue. Not really a mechanistic thing, but just more of like a reminder. Like, I don't look at Narath and think soldier as much, because his background is his more recent background is like subservient to fucking Lichman, Yeah, I think giving you a feature from each one is probably within bounds, but Right. So in the case of Ruined, you can do Alert, Skilled, or Tough, which is interesting. Yeah, I mean, I guess just letting it be known that if somebody wants a background, has a background in mind for their character, and the background entry in some D&D Beyond page or whatever, the Wikidot or 5e tools, doesn't include a feature, but they have features in mind that would work for that, like letting them know that I'm open to that. I just don't know. I'm not really very familiar with the broad feat list for 5e. You bring me the feet, I'll count the toes. You know what I'm saying? But I'll decide. I'll pass judgment. I think that's fine. I also think though that like having progression based on you leveling up and based on your feature or your background rather is totally valid. Really cool. Same way that I think like leveling up, doing something related to your race could be cool. Obviously, if you're some kind of race that like actually has a significant, like the more power they have for whatever reason, the more I don't know, stinky they become. Just throwing random shit out there. Then that's like one thing. But most features are bad. Okay, interesting. Well, I guess. If you guys ever end up in a situation where you have a feature that has a good flavor but bad statistics or whatever, that can also be a point to be retrofitted and playtested with some adjustments. Yeah, giving up the ASI is pretty fucking bad. Well, you don't have to worry about that in this new system that we're drafting here because you just get 1 ASI every level, which isn't +2 every level. Honestly, though, maybe it should be. I mean, with how infrequently you level up in a Cindersaur, maybe it does actually make sense to give you a straight up +2, like +1 mod every level. I'd probably have to go back and standardize some of the custom race stuff so that you're never getting like a ridiculous amount of ASIs from the race. But I'd have to think about it. Yeah, I feel like... Well, yeah, the feat is actually... We're talking about, like, adding a feat to level 1, which makes level 1 even more, like, significant. But which I'm not really against. Just pointing out that it is a thing. Yeah, I think maybe +2 is fine here. The main thing that I was thinking about is just that I did want to give you some sort of like... I'm getting closer to that thing I wanted to do, you know what I mean? Well, the extra hit points I'm torn on. I know I didn't respond to that when you were talking about it initially. But like the extra HP I'm kind of torn on. Because I don't typically give the enemies a lot of HP. And if I have to supplement the challenge part of it by adding more enemies, that becomes more challenging to run, and I don't know, makes the game feel makes the world feel a little bit more dead in some ways. Actually, ironically, you think like, oh, more stuff going on equals better, but because I can't really like intimately run everything. I don't know. Yeah, I was thinking about that regarding spell progression. Should probably be a bit more quick. And we didn't really ever figure out exactly how we wanted to do spell slot recovery. I think maybe the point at which you need to rest before you continue on and have your spells back should probably be like after you expend a number of spell slots equal to like 10 times your character level. So like at level 1, you can cast a level 1 spell slot 10 times. You can cast a level 1 spell 10 times before having to rest. And short rest probably gives you half or a quarter or something of that back. And the reason why and it's just a spitball, I don't actually know if 10 would be the right number. But what would happen is we would implement some kind of cooldown rule or something. So that like when you cast a level 1 spell, the next turn you can cast a level 1 spell again, sure. If you cast a level 2 spell, the next 2 turns you cannot cast a level, like you can only do cantrips, right? And then we were talking about like making cantrips bonus actionable, so you can still cast 2 cantrips. I mean, the cooldown thing is mostly just there. Maybe it should be 10 plus your character level or something, or 10 plus your proficiency bonus. I'm not really sure. Because what I would want to avoid is a case where like, I'm mostly thinking about it from the enemy's case. Like there was that enemy in a recent ADS session that did the lightning bolt move. And if he could do lightning, that's like a 3rd level spell slot, right? So if he could do lightning bolt 3 fucking times, you know what I mean? Like, without any cooldown, that's not very good. But if your spell slots are like, yeah, I guess I mostly am also thinking that if there's a ton of power creep like that, I guess that is the idea. Even in original D&D, like in vanilla 5th edition, which is not original D&D, but vanilla 5th edition, vanilla 5th edition is kind of like the casters can blow their entire power budget in one fight and then basically have cantrips after that. And so I guess from that perspective, it's probably fine to think of it like, okay, there is no cooldown. It's just the spell slot cap. How many spell slots do you have? How many spell slot levels do you have available? Like a mana system, like what Balethal was saying. So I could see that, and then you got potions of arcane recovery and stuff like that. So I am thinking about it from the perspective of the enemies. I'm also worried about like the power creep or whatever. But if you need a short rest to even get a quarter of your spell slots back, then that's not very helpful in the same way. So you are still gated, but you're way less gated than before. So, like, for example, if I go to Silas's page here and I look at his spell sheet, you know, he likes to use command. He likes to use, I forgot he had cure wounds actually. He likes to use this stuff, right? Like he likes to use enlarge reduce. If he has spell slots equal, like he's level 3, so he has 13 spell slots or whatever we would say about that. Then he can cast enlarge reduce 6 times, and then a first level spell slot once, you know, without having to rest. And that's like way better than casting it twice and that being it. So. Am I allowed to see? Yeah, we're all here. This is all just, we're all just talking about gameplay systems and stuff. Welcome, Champlin. Well, resting is not as fun and exciting as going to smash the next orc encampment or whatever. Just ain't it. All right, I will say, I think this is a fine way for now. Maybe it would be that. That means you start off with 13 spell slots, though. There's a lot. A lot of times you can cast a 13th level spell, a first level spell. I mean, think about what math would need to be true for me to multiply it by your character level. Okay, your character level and your proficiency bonus times 2. You get 6 at first level, 8 at second level, and then big upgrade at third level is you get 12. And then you get, at fourth level, you get 4 plus 3 is 7. So then you get 14. And then at fifth level, you'd be like 5 plus 4 is 9. So that's 18. And sixth level is 20. To match vanilla, you need 19 spell slots by level 6. Well, I think you get 20 at level 6. If my math is correct. Because it's 6, your level. Your proficiency bonus is 4. Yeah, and then if we were multiplying that by 2. So we're saying character level plus prof bonus times 2. And we're doing it this way. So it would be... This is spell slots character level plus prof bonus times 2. So this is first 6, or yeah. Second is 8. Third is 12. Fourth is 14. Fifth is 18. And sixth is 20. That's not a very... that isn't a very sensible scaling system. But... insofar as, like, it just kind of jumps around. If we were to try to normalize this on a graph or whatever, it would actually have to be like 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21. It would just be starting off at 6, and then you'd increase by 3 spell slots each level. I think either way it's fine. But if we wanted it to not be as much of a... I kind of like the abnormal spike, though, that happens between second and third level. 3 plus 3 times level. Yeah, that's basically what that would turn into. But I do kind of like the, like, oh, I hit third level. Now I'm an epicer caster, you know? I don't know. There's something kind of neat about that. But it probably doesn't matter that. Whatever we decide. Or 3 plus. I feel like this doesn't... yeah, I don't actually think this is a huge deal, regardless of how we do it. But I think this is pretty neat. My music has come to an unceremonious halt. Okay. Oh, well, I got your message about being sicko mode. Yeah, we've got... these are some mechanistic adjustments that we wanted to make. Most of these are related to character progression. Some of them I had other ideas. Yeah, 10 turns is a minute. So you get one final minute on this Earth, basically. Yeah. So... yeah, basically, what we wanted to try to achieve, like what I was thinking of anyway, and 3 was here when I was coming up with this stuff and changing it up or whatever, was one sec. Yeah, I think most of the time battle will be over by the time 10 turns is up. It's supposed to be really impactful. So let me pitch it again, since at the time I think it was only 3 who was here. So Professor DM on YouTube has a game system he calls Deathbringer, and it's supposed to be a more stripped down tabletop. It's like fast combat and stuff like that. And one of the ideas that he had was that when you take fatal damage, the first time you actually get rewarded for it. Like you get up, and then you're, like, after you recover or whatever, you have some kind of benefit. And so that's why it says you gain permanent boons after a battle. Now, I don't know how many downs. I think it'll be after 4 downs. So you can get downed 3 times, and then the next down is it for you. But I think it's 3 in his. So, like, the first time you get downed, you get, like, a slight bonus. And the second time you get downed, you get a really big bonus. And then the third time you get downed, it's over. I think that's how it works for his system, from what I'm remembering. And he described it as like when you are dead, like when you take your down for the last time, instead of being like incapacitated the way that you are when you're rolling for death saving throws or whatever, you actually are just dragging your entrails around behind you as you kill people for the final round or whatever, and then you die after the battle. And so formalizing that in a rule set here, it's a little bit more like this is your send-off, this is your moment. And also thinking about it like if somebody chooses to actually die, like they're already at that, like maybe by the time that you get to like the climax of the campaign or a high point or a final point or something, like where we are in ADS right now. Imagine, if you will, that say Narath has already been downed a sufficient number of times for this like death's door interaction to occur, and the rest of the party is like they're a little bit battered, but they're not anywhere close to death's door the way that he is. Like if he goes down one more time, it's over for him. And then there's a moment where like another big bad shows up, and it's just going to be like too much. And then Narath says, all right, like this is my moment now, and steps for, and like that willful sacrifice to all but guarantee victory in that battle. Or at the very least, like it doesn't guarantee it when you think about it, really, but I think it's significant. Yeah, it's like as you go through this moment, you're at this moment, you no longer like it's like you let go of the trappings of mortal life because you know that your mortality is your clock is up, you know, like your time is up. And through some sort of divine gift to you, or as if channeling all of the energy of the life you would have led had you not been struck in this moment, you go out in this final moment, this final minute of life. Death's downs do not reset natively, like on long rest or anything. What I was thinking is that you could try to get them reset, and this is actually related to what 3Crow's asking in a way. My thinking was that famous Revivify spell that just revives a dead person. The idea that I had was that Revivify would basically remove one fatal blow from your record, so to speak. So I like that. I think that's pretty cool. So if we take all of the things that by default resurrect somebody, and instead make it so that they abolish one of your deaths, one of your demises, I think that could be really good for, like, that's an expensive, out of reach ability for a lot of people. And all it does here is just make it so that you stave off death's door for one more time or whatever. Yeah, for ignoring the temporal limitations of Revivify. I just mean like stuff in general that has been used to raise dead parties, dead party members. That I think turning that into sparing the dying instead, spare them one of their deaths, strike from their cosmic record one of their failures. I think that's pretty neat. When it comes to the other component of that, which is what 3Crow's question was about, which was resurrection rituals requiring a relationship with gods or attempting to bring forth the character's spirit to commune with them another time. I think it would be kind of interesting. So this is a discussion that I am glad that more people are here, because I see my brother's also here. You, Um, a lot of the party is like a lot of the party of all of our campaigns is here right now, and so I think it's really cool to. I think it would be really neat if we all got like just a little bit more comfortable with the idea that, okay, my character might die, but that doesn't mean I stop playing the game. It just means that my role in the game shifts. My role in the experience is going to shift into me controlling an NPC, me controlling a like something different than what I was, what my character was, and maybe my character is gone for good, or maybe I control a character that I've had in the backlog waiting to go. You know, a character concept that I had, and you can still have the party decide that they are going to try to revive the spirit, the fallen warrior. You can still have that be the case, especially if it's an NPC that is taken over by a player as opposed to one of their own creations. I think having it be something more involved is always good, because it is, you don't want to trivialize death. You don't want to make it so that you can simply like undo something like that. So even if it's something like there are material components and you must go on a quest in order to obtain the resources required to procure them, that's still more satisfying than just having those things on hand. But obviously, if it requires divine intervention, if it's like Jurgle's got to write you a permission slip to go back to the land of the living, you know, something like that. I feel like that's pretty cool. I feel like that's pretty legit. So I think if everybody in general knows that there are other characters that they can play in the interim period while the ultimate final fate of their fallen character is ascertained, that would be generally a good thing to have. The other thing too, though, is to consider stuff like whether or not the when you go through the whole rigmarole of creating this system for downs and deaths, and you have the death's door stuff going on where you become this like impervious to destruction entity for a moment and then you pass on. That feels like it's a really momentous thing in universe. And it doesn't really if they can come back after that, that feels like there might be that might be an interesting decision to make, actually. So maybe in order to become like, in order to be brought to death's door, and like you got a choice to make as the dying character. Like, do you just embrace your demise, but tether yourself to the earth still so that you may be resurrected? Or do you embrace your demise in a different sort of way and abolish all remnants of your spirit here, making it essentially impossible to resurrect you, but getting the benefit of the 10 rounds of imperviousness? It might be too powerful. I mean, we would have to get into a situation where it could be tested. The double actions part feels right. The 10 turns part maybe is what is the most controversial. I also don't know that you would tank all the damage, to be honest. It depends on what's actually killed you. Yeah, it would be a pretty large quest, I think, to make that happen. Yeah, I was gonna say if it's only negative your max HP, then I do like that, but you have to remember you're starting at 0 hit points, right? So I think you are being. It is sending. It's just not sending on your end. You could try switching to live chat if you're not. This is what I have. It's also coming through on my stream too, which is using top chat. So I don't know about that one. Who knows, man? Regardless of the specifics of how the HP works, I think it's fine if you're not impervious to damage. I was debating whether or not you should be resistant, the way that like a barbarian is resistant to damage, and then obviously you could stack them. So a raging barbarian that's dying would take quarter damage, but I don't know. It's probably not that big of a deal. Any thoughts on adding more depth to armor class? Not exactly armor class, but I did think about having like certain armors, each armor archetype be not. So there's like light, medium, and heavy, but I also mean like the material that the armor is. I think if each kind of armor gave you some sort of specific benefit or had some specific interaction with it, it would be pretty good. I mean, you'd have to take a poll on that one. I don't think anybody misses the two-hit system, other than you, obviously, saying that you did. If there's a concern that like building your character to have more AC gives you more, doesn't give you as much of a benefit, then I think that would probably be an amicable thing to try to work around, you know? Like, I don't miss rolling again. I think the elimination of a roll was really good for combat speed in Cosmonarchy. But in here, we already do have like damage reduction based on how well you roll. But if we wanted to make it so that you're, I don't know, we could add an infinite number of permutations to how that works. The problem is figuring out how to keep it all in our heads so that we remember to apply it correctly. Oh, I don't think we ever used the cover system, actually. I don't remember any moments where it was deliberately used. I certainly didn't remember anything about it, so forgot it existed. Yeah, people are really slow. It sometimes takes upwards of 5 minutes for one player's turn to be taken. But we've been playing for over a year and a half now, right? Or, yeah, I think so. Wait, is that right? Yeah, August of 24 till now. Yeah, I don't know. It would be nice. Unfortunately, we play kind of late at night, and so I feel like half of our players are sleeping. Ironically, I think we were a little bit faster at combat very early on. Because everybody was like, oh shit, I gotta engage myself. Engaging brains. Now, I think the cover system could just be recaptured by having it being in cover should give you I think if you're in cover and somebody misses an attack on you, then they probably should just miss. That's a little bit different. That's a little bit different than it always being a problem. I mean, I could try skipping turns, but I have a feeling that would not end very well. Hey man, you're preaching to the choir. I do my best despite controlling like sometimes like 30 dudes depending on the battle to make my turns as quick as possible because I mean sometimes they need to be like drawn out a little bit if it's something really important. But most of the time they don't. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I haven't really thought that much about armor class, but I guess I'll have to keep it in mind. So I'll post this stuff in our Homebrew Avenue on the server. If Three Crow or anybody else has other ideas that they want me to go over real quick. Feel free. All right, I'm gonna have to pop off here in a moment, so I'll wait a few more moments and then I will be departing. I do feel like there are some nice rules that we have achieved based on that. I think it's going to be a good time for sure. I'm looking forward to... I think we could probably retroactively apply those rules fairly easily to... I think we could probably do that pretty easily if we were to reapply those to like Terath's Hunt, for example, since most of the party is level, like half the party's second level and half the party's first level. So that would be pretty easy. Probably a little bit harder for any of the other active fantasy campaigns, but maybe Paladin Partner would be possible. ADS like we've been actively playing, so it's a little bit weirder. All right. GG. Thank you to Three Crow for sponsoring today's stream, and I will be back in action soon, hopefully, because I got more streams to do it, believe it or not.